Okay, so what did you notice? First impressions. Maybe yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Why does he want no one to know this?
Why does he want no one to know this? What is this mystery? Yeah. So many people want something from him. Pulled in this direction and that direction. There's an emergency, but then there's an interruption with another emergency. There's a whole crowd there. Yeah. Think about how difficult it would have been for that woman to get through the crowd in her condition. She's pretty determined. Yeah, she's got a great deal of faith in this moment. But she's afraid about being found out too. That's an interesting turn, isn't it? She's been through it all, and finally she's healed. And someone's saying, explain yourself? Of course that's frightening. I imagine it's kind of something like somebody saying, explain yourself, but what she's hearing is explain yourself, right? Much more of a demand. I imagine, all the adrenaline and tears and deep breathing and relief and fear and all of that kind of mixed together for this whole, as she tells it blurts out everything, right? Tells the whole 12-year saga. Where do you think you might be in this situation? Who do you think you might resonate the most with? Or maybe you can see the world through the eyes of a few different people. Maybe there's a few that you can understand. Maybe there's one that you particularly identify with. Some character analysis. Jairus, what's his status motivation? His status is pretty high, right? Leader of the synagogue. What's his motivation? His daughter's sick. He's worried about his daughter. So what does he do? Asks for help. Goes and finds Jesus specifically and asks him for help. Yeah, exactly. Why does he think he can do that?
He's desperate.
Desperate? Absolutely. Yeah. He's maybe had some experience. I wonder a little bit too if he's had some experience of being able to just go and find solutions and ask for them and they get done. He's a pretty influential community figure. Probably has been able to just go up and request, an audience or time from whomever, who can protect his own, just thinking about kind of his whole life experience, but maybe is shaken, gets desperate when he finds out that there's some things that are outside of his control. But he's going to look for solutions and find them. And I suspect that the world has taught him that he can do that. His life and his experiences so far. So if any of that resonates with you, kind of the question that comes out of that is not just in this situation, but in general, how do you use that power? Because that's power. How about the woman? We'll move on to her. The woman wants to, what's her motivation? Be healed, get better. Yeah. Where's her status at? Right? Yeah. She's a woman, she's sick, she's lost everything. She's on her own, right? There's nobody who tells her story for her when Jesus calls her up. She has to advocate and speak for herself. Maybe has realized through experience that everything is out of her control. So that's nothing new. But here's Jesus who seems to have everything under control. And no one else is going to fight for you, so you have to get there on your own through the crowd. Not making trouble, just wanting to get better. And then you're caught. But you're also heard and affirmed. So what do you do with your story? What do you do with that new life? How about the crowd? What are they doing there? They're probably just there to see Jesus, really, right? We don't really know much about them. But Jesus is there, so they're there too. Maybe that's a perspective. Maybe just ordinary people trying to get a glimpse of the extraordinary when it passes by. Something to tell your friends about when good stories are needed. Or something to push you just a little bit more toward a better path or a newfound motivation by being in that great presence. So, being the crowd, how do you react when you see Jairus or the woman then? These people that kind of interrupt the scene. What do you do? What do you say about it later? How about the little girl? 12 years old and an experience like that. Terrified, relieved, all of the above. Very much cared for too, isn't she? She is surrounded by people who care about her. This person is cherished. And maybe that makes sense. Maybe you can point to a support system that you know you can count on to do what's best for you. Find the best care, make the best decisions. Find a solution when all seems lost. A security net that you really can fall into. So if that's your perspective, your question then is, what do you learn from this experience of community, of being cared for like that? And you have her community, those people gathered at the house, the wailing and weeping ones. It's hard to talk about them without acknowledging that in reality their story might have ended differently. Sometimes people don't have miraculous recoveries, and we just need to acknowledge that this story isn't every story. But it is this story, and it does become their story. So if that's your perspective, if you've experienced something like that, how do you continue to look for and find miracles after this? What does this one allow you to carry with you as you continue on? And the disciples, I know I've said it a million times already. When the disciples show up, you got to pay attention, right? They kind of stand as observers too, don't they? Kind of like the crowd. But they get more of the story. They see all the pieces. Peter and James and John actually go into the house. So maybe they're the ones that we can identify with, because like them, we got to see all of the different perspectives and learn from them. So walking through a passage like that is a bit of a different approach than just the normal sermon format, to kind of think about each of the perspectives as we encounter them. Maybe you found a perspective that you sympathized with. Maybe you heard a new one that you hadn't considered before. Maybe as I was talking, something completely different came to mind. That's okay too. One thing I will say that stuck with me, and we talked a little bit about this in the children's message, but that support network that we mentioned, it always includes Jesus. And here too, both in the vast number of people that are advocating for the child, that huge support network, and the one all by herself. Jesus sees both of them. And he makes those around them, the crowd, the disciples, the people, see them and make time for them too. And that's the question that I take with me, actually, is how do we look for those who might otherwise be unseen and make sure that they know that they're seen and heard, and advocate for them too. Jesus becomes the woman's advocate when he gives her an audience of the entire crowd that's there and makes her faith a witness to them and all who would follow afterwards for centuries, to us today. In the midst of Jairus begging for his daughter, Jesus calls this woman daughter. How do we react when we feel lost or overlooked and discover that we are seen, when Jesus finds us and brings us back? Jesus also becomes an advocate for the girl, not only telling her to rise up, but also making sure that her community will see to her needs beyond just existing, right? She's alive. Now feed her. She will continue to be in their care, and Jesus makes sure that they know that too. How do we look to the margins to see beyond what the status quo would allow, to see what others don't, to see who others won't? Who do you identify with in this story? Maybe take the bulletin with you and read it again later today. See if another perspective catches your attention. What has this experience of the story changed in your understanding of the world? And how do you use that perspective, that experience, to inform you for tomorrow and for the rest of the week?